A talented performer performing for America's Got Talent died, and the family requested they go ahead and play his audition anyway. A very talented young man. We'll talk about that today. Also, Americans are lazy, and surprisingly enough, that makes Americans fat. And a Japanese history buff is right now doing the impossible, telling the History Channel that their Earhart theory is all bunk. That and not very much more, actually, for yesterday. A very light day of messaging, but still a podcast for daily recaps for today. Today happens to be July 13th, 2017. And welcome to the podcast. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. I'm your host for this podcast and the moderator for things at thisistheconversation.com. And yesterday, very light day of moderating any type of stories, even though the big story remained for the day, Donald Trump and, of course, Donald Trump Jr. Dealing with the Russian allegations. Donald Trump, of course, headed to Paris today, actually there as we record this right now, preparing for some meetings with the new president, Macron, and other things going on there as well. But these are the stories that we recapped from actually getting out there for you guys on yesterday. So wasn't a lot to choose from. So we have the best of the best and the cream of the crop. And this will be a very short podcast for today. And how do you get in on a day where it's short or long? Hopefully today, this Thursday, will be much better in getting more conversations out there. But what we do all day long is we post links to various stories across the news on various sources, and we look at your response to them. You go to Twitter and follow us at th_conversation, or Facebook and look for This Is a Conversation, and just react, reply, respond, retweet, do what you do to the actual stories, and we know those are the ones that are most important to you. You also go to our main website, which is thisistheconversation.com, and reply to them there as well. Also leave us feedback at the website to see which stories are the best and what we can do better for you in upcoming episodes. Now let's get to the very quickly done, hastily created listing of stories for the day. Literally not a lot going on in our actual listing of stories. Starting off very quickly with Brandon Rogers, who was a doctor and a contestant on America's Got Talent. He did his audition about a month ago, and he died pretty soon after that. So here we are now a month later, and the audition from their city has come up, and it's time to play it. The family requested to go ahead and play the audition. He actually blew the judges away, got all four people to sign him on and send him off to the next round. And so he actually would have had a chance to do a lot of damage in the business for the show coming up in the next rounds, of course. Him passing leaves that legacy to be untold. So Brandon Rogers, our hearts and prayers go out to the family, and we, of course, thank that family for letting us be a part of viewing this great performance he had for America's Got Talent from about a month ago. Check it out on YouTube. There are still clips of the performance out there. Now, they're still investigating the KC-130 crash in Mississippi. What they're finding is the plane developed some problems when it hit the high altitudes. Now, somewhere hitting the cruising speeds is essentially where the problem went down. The problem happened, and the plane literally went down in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi. Of course, the biggest issue with that KC-130 was it was carrying lots of weapons, lots of munitions, and lots of ammo. It was transporting a special elite Marine unit who carries lots of weapons, a lot of crazy things like that. And so after the plane crashed, as the plane was burning, there was a lot of work to secure the area to keep civilians away, mostly from the small explosions coming from arms just setting off in the fire. Still more to be done in the investigation, but right now we know that the plane crashed after developing some problems hitting the high altitudes, cruising over the central part of Mississippi. We talked a few days ago about that Amelia Earhart photo, or the photos that show Amelia Earhart and her navigator living more or less alive and well, mostly alive and well, among Japanese-looking people in some old photos. The thought process was the plane went down somewhere near the Marshall Islands, and she was taken care of or captured or whatever and lived out her days in some sort of captivity in that general area. One history buff specifically, and now we're finding many amateur buffs are finding details on the photo to show that that photo is no good. In fact, the one in particular, a Japanese history buff saw the picture in the special, went to Google, searched for about 30 minutes, and found the original picture that picture was cropped from in the Japanese archive dated about 2 years prior to Earhart taking off in her flight. Therefore, the picture of Earhart surviving and living among the native people of the Marshall Islands is it's not a fake, but it definitely does not go along with the actual theory that she survived that plane crash from back in the day and went on from there. So I guess you can move on with your next special that's a bit conspiracy theorist history channel and move on to see what happens. More alien stuff, I'm sure. And a new study shows that America is one of the laziest nations in the world. And because of that, Americans are really, really fat. Now, the correlation isn't really hard to connect the two. People who don't move a lot most likely are people who are a bit more portly, but that's the connection they're making in this study. And the study for laziness isn't just we don't like to do stuff. It's stuff in particular. Americans in general aren't a very active group of people. They don't do a lot of walking just for walking. They don't do a lot of side athletics, if you will. They don't do a lot of moving around if they don't have to. And a lot of our lifestyle, a lot of our life just in general for technology and the way we are, and just kind of our way of life here in America is dealing with being sedentary, not moving around, sitting around and watching action as opposed to being a part of the action in general. The big fix for this would be more things like they do in Europe, where they have things in Germany like Volksmarches, where the people around the city get up and they walk around the countryside. They go on long hikes together, things like that. A little more activity throughout the day, the whole 30 minutes a day thing, and playing with your kids as well. And the issue is not so much with us as the adults per se, but it is the learned culture for the kids. As kids are doing more things sedentary, more things inside, i.e. playing more video games and doing stuff more on cell phones and tablets, as opposed to having nothing better to do but go outside and play for a few hours, they're not willingly going out there and getting exercise. One good thing about the study is there is a group of folks in the middle 20s and up into 30s that sort of get it in gear, that have overcome or trying to overcome the sedentary lifestyle they gain from youth. So a lot of young people see as they get into maturity a need to pick up their exercise level. However, it doesn't equate to the mass majority of Americans, as we are all essentially very lazy, or at least not very active, and that makes us as a collective a bit portly. And those are the stories. A very short, very, very short podcast for the day. Maybe you like it this short. Maybe we'll stick to more or less 3 or 4 stories in the future because this works out much better for you. Let us know and we will adjust. We will do what we can to make things happen. If you like more detailed stories and more details in the stories, we may help work at that as well. Meanwhile, today is a Thursday. We'll have hopefully more conversations to choose from to put in the conversation recap for tomorrow. And tomorrow, of course, we'll recap the top 10 plus the other ones, and we'll adjust that as well. We'll do the top 10 stories for the week based on your reaction to them. The Mississippi KC-130 crash, beside being one of the few stories we had for yesterday, was a pretty heavily trafficked story. So that one may pop up coming on Saturday for the weekly recap podcast. We also may go ahead and launch the commentary for this Sunday. We don't really have a name for it, don't have a full format for it, but we've got a lot to talk about. A lot of the Don Jr. stuff has kind of got us riled up here in the office, so we may have to jump on Don Jr. on this Sunday, I should say. Meanwhile, to be a part of everything we got going on, it is very simple. Follow us on social media. Facebook, look for us at This Is a Conversation. Follow us on Twitter at th_conversation. th_conversation. And, of course, our main website is thisisaconversation.com, where we have plenty of great features that get you in on all the big conversations going on around the world and all the big things that are trending and some stories that are just a little, just kind of out there that may catch your interest. We want to know what you think about them, and we'll talk about them in the next upcoming day. In the meantime, I'm going to thank you again for being a part of our whole shebang, and maybe we'll take a cue from yesterday's gaffe, we'll say, and missing out on getting some of these things posted, and we will turn this into a bit of a shorter broadcast. Maybe you enjoyed that. Let us know in comments. Ratings and reviews wherever you get your podcasts are always awesome. Share it with a friend, share it with an enemy, share it with somebody you don't even know, because sharing is caring. And of course, Be back tomorrow because we have more, and hopefully a lot more stories to recap for the day from This is the Conversation and the Daily Recap Podcast.